Beyond Resilience is a series of curated conversations created by Firelight with the purpose of exploring the challenges, strategies, and experiences of creating and distributing work during a time of crisis.
Nobody's going to give us any power until we ask for it, until we demand it.
The role of storytellers right now is to tell those stories that people are refusing to tell, and to do so in a transparent manner.
It is critical to me that my team, again, reflect the community that we are going to be talking about, or the community that is the subject.
There are so many missing narratives in the Black experience that would do so much to help both the understanding of Black people in our current situation, but also other people who are trying to understand what's going on.
The decision makers need to change. It is not okay that this small group of white folks are the ones who determine which stories matter, which filmmakers matter, and decide and set the terms on which these stories are made. That is literally what has gotten us to the place that we are in.
We're talking about systemic change, not a one-time grant to a couple of organizations. That's what we need.
I love that trailer. Welcome, everyone. I'm Erika Navarro, the Senior Director of Artist Programs at Firelight Media. I am a Chicana woman with medium brown skin. I think lots of folks growing their hair long for the pandemic. So I have long, wavy black hair. I have translucent pink glasses, gold hoops, red lipstick, a white button-down shirt, and a blurred white background. I am here on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape people in Brooklyn. We start with land acknowledgements at Firelight because we are here for Indigenous sovereignty, and we all have a responsibility to consider what it means to the history and legacy of colonialism, and encourage you all to make land acknowledgements in the chat. Our chat moderator will drop a link if you want to learn whose ancestral lands you live on. I want to thank first to my amazing team at Firelight Media who helped put this event together, including Nicole Docta, Felicia Chanko, Justin Sherwood, and Patricia Marte. Thank you to Open Society Foundations for your support of the Beyond Resilience series. And this project is also supported in part by the NYC Department of Cultural Affairs and NYC Council and the National Endowment for the Arts. And thank you to the Firelighters. That is the generous group of individual donors whose support provides truly vital funds for Firelight Media and our family of filmmakers. If you're interested in becoming a Firelighter, we'll drop a link in the chat so you can make a tax-deductible donation. And last but not least, thank you to Karen Schmeider, who is taking care of our brilliant captioning services. If you need to access the captioning on a desktop computer, click the CC button in the Zoom window and captions should appear. And if you're on a mobile device, click on More on the Zoom window or the 3 dots and find the captioning feature in the pop-up menu. A little about Firelight Media. We are a premier destination for nonfiction cinema by and about communities of color. We produce documentary films, we support emerging to mid-career filmmakers of color, and we cultivate audiences for their work. Our programs range from our flagship series, the Doc Lab, to regional labs, Groundwork, and the William Greaves Fund, which supports mid-career BIPOC filmmakers. And we also produce shorts, most recently the Hindsight series, which you can stream at firelightmedia.tv/hindsight. And this wonderful short you are about to screen and learn about comes out of our partnership with Frontline. And so to learn more about that, I'm really happy to introduce Erika Howard, who is the impact producer for Frontline and one of our incredible partners for the Frontline Firelight Fellowship, which supports diverse independent producers who are interested in investigative and filmmaking and deep reporting. So welcome, Erika, I turn it to you.
Thank you so much, Monica. As you all know, my name is Erika Howard. I am an African-American woman. I have short black hair. I'm wearing gold earrings, as well as a gold necklace with a pearl and a light green sweater. I'm sitting in my living room in New York, and it is decorated with artwork and plants. I have to say it's really an honor for Frontline to be in partnership with Firelight Media. We share a similar vision with supporting diverse filmmakers, understanding the importance and impact of their contributions behind the lens in the documentary field. And it's also a great pleasure to join you all today, this audience, for this special program. For those who may not be as familiar with Frontline, it is the nation's longest running investigative documentary series on television. We broadcast on PBS and create programs that explore the most vital issues of our times through powerful storytelling, whether domestic stories developing across America or exploring the ones taking place globally. In my role as an impact producer, I seek to bring these stories, whether they're created as long-form films, through interactive media, shorts, and even podcasts, and take them beyond the broadcast and into forums like this one, where audiences are given an opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue around topics that they care deeply about. So to begin today's program, we're incredibly proud to present a special screening of Death is Our Business on the 1-year anniversary of its filming. Death is Our Business examines in intimate and moving detail how Black funeral homes in New Orleans have had to adapt to the devastating impact of COVID-19 and their community. While revealing the racial disparities of the virus's toll, award-winning filmmaker Jacqueline Olive shines a light on how the coronavirus has rocked the Black community's cherished cultural practices in a city that is no stranger to loss and grief. I'm also happy to add that this partnership was born out of a co-production between Frontline and Firelight Media, as well as World Channel. We know these stories are vitally important, and I'm glad that we're able to come together to present this one to you. The film is about 30 minutes long, and following the screening, we'll be joined by filmmaker Jacqueline Olive and panelists Denise Shervington and Jasmine Navarre, both of whom are featured in the film. You're in for a very compelling and engaging film and conversation. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join us.
Emotions run high every time I watch that film. Really excited to welcome our guest, director and producer Jacqueline Olive, who is an independent filmmaker and immersive media producer, 15 years of experience in journalism and film. Her debut feature documentary, Always in Season, premiered in competition at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival and was awarded the Special Jury Prize for Moral Urgency. We're very proud that she's an alum of the Firelight Media's Doc Lab, in addition to this film she produced with us through the Frontline Firelight Fellowship. Jackie, if you want to give a quick visual description of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Monica. I'm, as Monica said, Jackie Olive. I am an African-American woman. I have naturally curly Black hair, shoulder length that does what it does. And I'm wearing my favorite color, which is a turquoise shirt and turquoise hoops. And I'm in my living room full of earthy colors. And I'm living on Owasso land on the central coast of California.
Thank you. We're also joined by Dr. Denise Shervington, a board certified psychiatrist who's recognized nationally and globally as a trauma specialist. She's the founder and director of the mental health division of the Institute of Women and Ethnic Studies, a community-based translational public health institute she founded in New Orleans. She's also the author of the book, Healing is the Revolution, a guide to healing from racial trauma. Which probably should be on everyone's book list if it's not. Dr. Shervington, would you like to do a visual description of yourself?
Certainly. My name is Denise Shervington. I am Jamaican born, hence my Jamaican accent. Been living in the United States for quite some time. I'm a Black woman. I have medium dark skin. I am what would be called a bald head in Jamaica. My head is shaved. I'm in my office and I try to liven it up with some sunflowers and art, as you might be able to see behind me.
Thank you. And we're also so happy to have Jasmine Navarre with us today, who you also saw in the film. Jasmine is a 4th generation mortician with the esteemed Rhodes family in New Orleans. She currently occupies multiple roles as a funeral director, embalmer, and manager of human resources, specializing in training and development. Jasmine is an Insight Institute certified celebrant, has taught funeral service history as an adjunct professor, and was recently featured in a Louisiana Weekly in a cover story about the rise of female mortician. Jasmine, would you please give us a visual description?
Yes. As we said, I'm Jasmine Navarre. I am a 40-year-old medium brown African-American woman in the greater New Orleans area. I'm located in my funeral arrangement office, wearing a festive black and white ensemble with complementary pearls. My natural hair is pulled away from my face.
Thank you. Well, I want to open it up, and please, if any of the folks here, if you have a question, please put that in the Q&A. I have a lot of questions. First, I'd like to just ask to all of you. We are exactly a year from when Jackie was on the ground in New Orleans filming with you all in the community there. So I'm kind of curious, like, you know, maybe your initial reaction to when you saw this film, and what is it like, you know, seeing it again today, 1 year after filming, and everything you were dealing with. Obviously, we're very much still in a pandemic, but that kind of like hindsight of looking back.
I might say, looking back, the sadness that I experienced, the joy, you know, that comes from the celebration, but the sadness that knowing that there was a loss, it still really reeks inside of me, and particularly so because we're not where we thought we would have been at this point in time. I was thinking that would have been behind us, but here we are in another surge, struggling to get the right public health measures in place. And so the sadness for me this time was even more intense because it has not traveled the course we thought it would have, which meaning it would have been behind us.
I would say the same. I would share that at the original screening, as I shared with Jackie, I was quite anxious. Our industry doesn't often allow people in to see what it is we do. Our work is based on reputation, and releasing that to someone else, of course, can be scary. Jackie did a phenomenal job, but I can honestly say that the initial screening, we were holding our breath as to what we would see. And of course, today we are honored by what Jackie put forth. She did a great job of sharing the work of the team, the work of the industry, and represented the culture and the celebration here in New Orleans exceptionally well.
And I just want to say how much I appreciate having the ability to be on the ground and in the midst of all that was going on with everyone, the work that you're doing, Jasmine, the work that Louis Charbonnet and the folks at Charbonnet were doing as well, and Dr. Shervington, in the middle of all that, you know, folks were dealing with in terms of their work, but also just the intensity of the emotional impact of the moment. And you were gracious and generous with your time. And so I appreciate that. And also to thank Firelight and Frontline for the partnership that really made this film possible in supporting my work. You know, I think about, you mentioned, Monica, about the, you know, where we are now a year later. When I came in August, I got there in the midst of a surge. And so there had been this really intense time in March and April, which certainly you can see through a lot of the scenes in the film and people talking about that time. But there was a point at which folks were starting to think, oh, maybe it will taper off and there will be this moment. Particularly, I was there until the end of August. So in September, October, in the fall, people were really hopeful that there might be a bit of a lull and we would be moving out of the pandemic. And so to be back at this point again, where there's another surge with the Delta virus that's really so sadly prevalent in the South, and I'm from the South, so that's I'm really deeply saddened by that and by the political machinations that are going on that mean that people aren't protecting themselves in the way that they could in order to be even more safe and more careful during a really difficult time. And so that's the space that I'm in as I watch the film again, is I feel like we're back again at this point, and really also reminding myself that it's a long-term process and that this pandemic may go on potentially for years.
Well, Jackie, when you were joined this fellowship and we're developing some ideas, I'm curious if you can take us back to when you began to conceive of this project and what drew you to New Orleans and to this story.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Mississippi, so I am definitely New Orleans adjacent, about an hour and a half away. And I went to undergrad at Xavier University, so I knew New Orleans. I've lived there for 4 years. I've had family and friends that live there and been back and forth. And I also had lost family members during the pandemic. At the very beginning of the pandemic, I believe the day that the country closed down and I had to stop traveling and came back home, I missed being able to attend my godmother's funeral, who's a very dear family member, and have lost several, including my half brother during the pandemic. And so I understand that there is this need to grieve that was just totally aborted. There was early on no way to be able to process grief in a way that is familiar with me, in a way that's familiar through generations of my family and in the ways, some of the ways that you see them playing out in New Orleans. And so I understood that, one, that there's this emotional need for Black people in particular who were just so disproportionately impacted by the illnesses and by the deaths that came with COVID. And I will absolutely mention that almost as much impacted were Indigenous folks. And so there's this trauma that the release of these funeral practices that we weren't able to use, particularly in the beginning. And then I started to read about these ways that funeral homes like Rhodes and Charbonnet were adapting and figuring out how to serve their clientele in the way that's most essential with things like drive-through funeral homes. And that was really exciting. And then the other, I mentioned that it's twofold. The other reason is because I knew I was reading in the media about COVID and hearing about COVID, but not hearing particularly early on about the racial disparities. They weren't being acknowledged. The things that Black folks were going through, I was hearing from people that I knew in my community. And so I knew that there were things that people in New Orleans knew on the ground about the pandemic that was really important for people to start to explore in the mainstream.
Which I think you did such a beautiful job. You obviously took that responsibility so seriously, but you did it with so much care for everyone in New Orleans. Dr. Shervington, I have such a strong memory of seeing a very early rough cut of this film and hearing those words that opens the film now, when you say New Orleans is this very complex combination of suffering and joy. Katrina forced us to think a lot about what does it mean to heal, and that I think we're having a similar experience with COVID in this pandemic. How do individuals come back from extreme loss? And that to me is kind of the thesis or the central question the film is asking. We talked a bit already that we are still kind of in this grief and still haven't maybe totally processed this loss and this surge. So I'd like to think more like, given your background as a psychiatrist and trauma expert, and that New Orleans has endured so much, and still in so many ways, as you acknowledge healing from Katrina, and the way the film and you kind of lay out so clearly all the systemic inequities that made this a perfect storm for people of color, especially Black folks and Indigenous. Like, how do you think about this idea of resilience? People of color, especially Black folks, especially folks in New Orleans, are often called resilient. But do you think that what does that word name? What does it erase about living with trauma?
So resilience, again, is a very complex issue for us. It's because of our capacity to be resilient while we're here. If we can only imagine our ancestors, the enslaved people, how they had to, against all odds, find a way to keep living. It's also, I think, a reason why at times we are so overwhelmed and burdened, even though we can, because there has been so much. So with this pandemic, we started out with being separated from what was normal. Then we went through this angst of just feeling very chaotic, not knowing what to do. And I think what resilience is going to ask of us this time as people of color is to become a little more deeply reflective. We've got to, especially in New Orleans, we've barely made it out of Katrina, barely. If there's a hard rain, many people in New Orleans, their trauma gets reawakened. So what I think we're going to have to do in terms of resilience to avoid the fatigue from being asked over and over to bounce back up, to even bounce back better, we're going to have to really come to terms with the existential angst that we're facing now. We have to recognize the impermanence of our life, the finitude to our life, and we have to face it, which is what I think the beautiful celebrations, if it's only for that moment, we get to have to name through what we are seeing, and the beauty helps it to be easy. We, in the second line and the first line, we're accompanying the loss. And then hopefully, which sometimes is the part we try to run away from, that kind of releasing ourselves from the pain. So I think resilience is going to have to be much more intentional, because in particular for, I said New Orleans, but all people of color, we've come through so much. And again, the people who are indigenous or Latin people, I do some work with migrants. So, you know, all of us marginalized people are going to have to take seriously how we bounce back from this assault that has seemingly harmed us disproportionately once again.
Thank you, Dr. Shervington. I really appreciate your wisdom and insight into that. Jasmine, Dr. Shervington is talking a bit about that, how important it is for us to hold that space for joy as well. And I imagine you and your family, you kind of shepherd so many families through this moment of grief, but also joy. And you say in the film, you don't believe in New Orleans will ever get to a funeral that's not a celebration. Can you give us a little bit more insight into why a culture of celebration and joy is so important in New Orleans when laying folks to rest? Because you've got such a privileged position of being with so many families in this very delicate moment.
Yes, as Dr. Shervington mentioned, it has been a tough road for people, and of course, people of color. And here in New Orleans, of course, we work as hard as folks work all around the world, but the conditions sometimes can be weighted. And so with that, everything that we do is a celebration. And so when we come around to funeral service, it really becomes the last hurrah. If there was anything that wasn't celebrated in life, we find a way to celebrate it in death. And culturally, what we've seen within our community prior to COVID, and of course currently, is the number of people who participate in the service sometimes speaks to the social status of the individual or the value of life. Whether it is true or not, it is a gauge. It is an opportunity for people to then see that. So sometimes we have had to help and counsel on safety, but at the same time, not lose sight of that celebration being the last hurrah is the true opportunity for families to share the love or express the love, or to share with the community, that first and second line, the importance of the person for that last time. Because again, after the funeral, it's only within the immediate community where those celebrations continue.
Which is
our position, of course, I apologize. Our position, of course, has given us just an insight into that. And it doesn't matter whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's race, everyone that we service here is of the celebration culture. And so you constantly find that everyone is looking for the best way to show that love for their loved one.
Yeah, you make me think of that moment in the film where the son says, you know, the funeral will be filled to the rafters with people, and you know how many lives his mother touched because of that. And then to get to see him dance in the parking lot, you feel a bit of that release and honoring his mother. I think that really comes across to those of us who are not as familiar, if you've never witnessed the second line or, you know, been at a funeral in New Orleans. Jackie, please, what were you going to say?
Just to bridge off of that is that Jasmine, and you put it both so well, is that for people of color in particular, we can live with trauma and many things that are dehumanizing throughout the day and throughout our lives. And so the funeral is the time to really acknowledge someone's value and someone's worth. So it's particularly difficult when you can't feel the building with people. And I just want to say, acknowledge the folks who so graciously allowed us to film their funerals. And one of those is Miss Gladys Brown, who you see, who's in the film, whose son passed away. And I am still in touch with her. But the idea that despite the challenges, that it comes out, that was the thing that really struck me the most, is how this culture and this tradition that's rich, that comes out of deep cultural traditions, that it comes out and it's expressed however it can be expressed, really does speak to the strength of those traditions.
If you can believe it, we're almost at time. I wish I could talk to you, incredible women, for another hour, but there is a really good question that came in from the audience. So I'd love if we could maybe quickly ask it and answer. Kyle Baker said, such an important documentation of the intersection of mourning, survival, and labor that COVID augments, especially in minority communities. He'd like to hear, Jackie, how you navigated the storytelling space during fraught times.
Well, the first way is that I navigated it very carefully in terms of just having a strategy around making sure that my crew and the folks that I'm filming with, everyone is as safe as possible during the pandemic. And so putting precautions in place, particularly when we got into, for example, the street celebration, when you see the second line with Queen Kim Buti's funeral, and thinking about that ahead of time to make sure that the DP was safe in case the crowd grew, in which it did. And then just emotionally, I think for me, which is the beautiful thing about these two people here on the panel, Dr. Shervington and Jasmine Navarre, and the folks that I filmed with, is for me, navigating those emotional, difficult times is really the process of going through it and being present in it. And so that was really my strategy making the film, is just being present and really trying to deeply and complexly understand what was going on.
Well, I'm so sorry to be out of time, but thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Dr. Shervington. Thank you, Jasmine, for the work that you do, for this incredible film that you gave us, Jackie, and this opportunity to spend time with the good people of New Orleans. And it is both that grief and that joy that we get to experience in this film. I've always thought this film allows us a bit of space to process the grief that our country has not had in a moment to really process or acknowledge. I want to thank my incredible Firelight team, all the folks behind the scenes, and our partners at Frontline and World Channel that helped us produce this film and help Jackie realize her vision. Thank you all. Please tell everyone you know to watch Death Is Our Business. It's on YouTube for free on Frontline's YouTube. So, and everyone should be able to have access to it. And thanks again. I wish you all well, and we're gonna hold Dr. Shervington's words in my heart and process that for quite a while. Thank you all.
Thank you. Great to see you all.
Thank you.